The Romans almost reached India. You'll discover the 3 reasons why they decided not to conquer India, but at the end of this video, you'll see when it was that they almost did it. You'll understand why they didn't follow through with the conquest of India. So watch the video until the end. And the answer involves several different reasons. The first one is geographical and, along with it, logistical. Let's remember that the Romans could barely maintain control over the borders with Germania, having serious logistical and communication bottlenecks that prevented full control of Rome's borders with its nearby territory. To the north, the territory of Germania. In this scenario, there was already a small sense of the difficulty of communication and material logistics of the empire. No matter how highly developed it was, the entire framework of roads, the extensive network of legions, and the strategically important positions of the bureaucratic apparatus all remained vital. And military of Rome, even so, there was an awareness of the material limitations that the empire faced. Even today, entire wars are made unfeasible by logistical issues. We can recall that currently, at this moment, the Americans are having logistical difficulties for the maintenance of their war in Iraq. So since forever, logistical limitation has also been a limitation of ambition for the empires of history. It was no different with Rome. They knew that in order to have complete and full control over some territory in India, they would have to pass through immense stretches of deserts and also mountains. It would be very difficult to maintain a supply chain, provisioning, communication, and mass movement of troops and bureaucracies of the Roman state. To this place, they would need to pass, and they knew it, through the very difficult, challenging mountains and the harsh deserts that are found in the desert territories of Syria, Iran, and Iraq. These regions are known for being especially unfriendly to travelers. They would also have to cross the rugged, unfriendly mountains of Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Afghanistan, let's remember, after the time of Rome, came to be known as the graveyard of empires, a name that reflects its long history of resisting even the most powerful invaders. Such logistical and communication difficulties that this hostile territory creates for nations trying to go there. The Romans didn't venture, therefore, to pass through this and all these other territories that would be crucial for them to dominate to reach India. So, the first answer is a complete logistical infeasibility, a complete impossibility of communication and maintenance of a mass apparatus of the Roman state for the empire to reach India. Even today, in modern times, with the internet and communication and many more material provisions than in ancient times, it would be completely unfeasible for a state to maintain conquests from Europe to India, due to all this extremely difficult geography. Imagine then, in ancient times, when the Romans had difficulty maintaining logistical control simply over the routes that went to Germania, which was relatively close to Rome in Europe. So the first reason is this: it's geographical and consequently logistical. The second reason why the Romans did not annex Indian lands is much more important than just the geographical limitation that imposed, by force of nature, the material impossibility of creating the logistics needed to conquer Indian lands. The second reason why the Romans did not conquer Indian territories was geopolitical. And it had a first and last name, the Parthian Empire, which would later be known as the Sassanid Empire, whose territory encompassed precisely the crucial regions for the Romans to reach India. The current territory of Iran, the Persian territory, and also Mesopotamia. Every time the Romans advanced toward the east, which was the direction they needed to take to reach India, they encountered this powerful wall that was made up of their neighbors and rivals. In fact, they were a truly formidable rival to Rome. The Roman general Crassus was actually one of the notable Roman generals who unfortunately suffered defeats when they tried to advance against this powerful empire. At the Battle of Carrhae, he was completely humiliated. And simply to keep the border that Rome shared with this neighbor secure, which was right in the middle of the way to India, the Romans were already spending rivers of money and also the blood of their Roman troops. Well then, if they were already spending so many resources and making such considerable efforts just to remain alongside this empire, let alone even thinking about advancing beyond this empire, what does that really say about their situation? It was absolutely impossible, unthinkable for Rome to reach India with a neighbor in the way who was a powerful rival and who had already given Rome a lot of trouble, simply by existing right next to them. So they would never allow Rome to advance any further, beyond their own territory, all the way to India. Therefore, so far we have seen the geographical reason and also the geopolitical reason. But there are other reasons as well why the Romans did not reach India. The third reason why the Romans did not conquer India is actually quite simple and obvious. It is that beyond the geography and the Parthian Empire, which was in the way between Rome and India, India was not simply unprotected, waiting to be conquered. India was ruled by rich and powerful empires such as, for example, the Kushans and also very powerful local dynasties in the south. If Alexander the Great, centuries before, had suffered a lot to conquer a regional kingdom in northern India, obviously it would be no different for the Romans centuries later. It turns out that India enjoyed well-structured military armies with a huge number of soldiers, with expert archers, and also with war elephants. So, even if the Romans hypothetically overcame the hostile geography that separated them from India and also the Sassanid Empire, later, upon arriving in India, with their troops already very worn out from defeating the Persians, they would have to face an extremely complex military conglomerate that was difficult to defeat. So it was simply irrational for the Romans to try to invade and militarily conquer India, as they had done with other territories previously. The next and final reason why the Romans did not conquer lands in India was actually quite clever, in fact. It is because they simply did not need to. Because Rome could already extract all the wealth that the Romans were interested in from India, without the need for military conquest, but simply through trade. Through the Roman ports departing from Egypt, ships were sent from Rome to Indian ports, taking advantage of the monsoon winds that favored this maritime route, and there they made massive purchases of precious stones, spices, peppers, and silk, which is what mattered for the Romans to enjoy the best that India had to offer. And after making their purchases, they would return to Rome. This trade was so massive that it generated a trade deficit, so notorious that the Roman historian Pliny the Elder even complained about it, stating that it was more than 50 million sesterces in gold that the Romans would end up leaving in the hands of the Indians every year. Today we have Roman coins found in India precisely because of this massive trade. So, quite simply, there was no need for the Romans to militarily conquer that land to extract its wealth. They just had to buy it, and the price they would have spent to conquer it militarily would be many times more expensive than simply buying those riches the Romans wanted from India directly. Despite all this showing that it was, in fact, unfeasible for Rome to conquer Indian lands, I think it's worth mentioning the time Rome came closest to it, which was under the rule of the Roman Emperor Trajan in the year 116 AD, when the Roman Emperor led Rome's greatest offensive to the east ever conducted. On that occasion, he crushed his powerful neighbors of the Parthian Empire and even managed to capture their capital. After that, he marched with his legions to the shores of the Persian Gulf. On that occasion, he was the Roman who came closest to India. But due to the military and geographical logistics limitations already mentioned, reality immediately exacted a price for this audacity. This is because the peoples he had recently conquered in Mesopotamia attacked the Roman rearguard garrisons. And in this way, the fragile logistics that were already maintained with great geographical difficulty were cut, and the communication and supply lines of the Roman legions were severely compromised. At the same time, a violent Jewish rebellion was taking place on the island of Cyprus in Egypt and also in Cyrenaica. And these combined misfortunes forced Rome to divert its troops back to its western lands or risk losing the empire itself. So Trajan had to retreat to suppress these revolts, and also because he could no longer maintain his troops in the east with such logistical fragility, passing away 1 year later. And his successor, Emperor Hadrian, wisely assessed the damage reports and concluded that in fact it was impossible for Rome to maintain the ambition of having any control in such eastern lands of the world. And for this reason, he ordered the immediate withdrawal of all Roman troops that still remained in Mesopotamia and firmly established that the border of the Roman Empire would return to the Euphrates River. Rome retreated because advancing meant destroying itself. However, this was the closest it ever came to Indian lands, and I thought it was interesting to bring this curiosity to you. So if you want to know more about Rome and the most important empires in history that built humanity, please subscribe to this channel and leave a like. This is very important for the maintenance of this work. Thank you very much and see you later.